إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد. Alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed us, in which we now come to you again with our next portion of Sirat Nabawiyyah by Imam Abdul Malik ibn Hisham al-Basri rahimahullah. When we last left off, we had stopped at the portion where Tubba the Last had now entered Judaism. He had two rabbinical authorities or two rabbinical scholars as his advisors. He had entered into Judaism, and he had twice been made to relent from attacking two cities. One in the case of Yathrib, which would later become Al-Medina, because of the death of one of his children being assassinated. And the second was Mecca, after having been urged on to do so by Huzayl, one of the clans, Huzayl, and the two rabbinical scholars again made him relent. And upon relenting from this, he honored the Kaaba at their behest, clothed it with a kiswa for the first time in its history, and advised later rulers after him from Jurhum to do so. He advised them to purify the kiswa, not to bring any blood near it, nothing found dead, the clothes of menstruating women. He put a door on the Kaaba, one single door, and had a key made to go with it to where it would be opened as and when required. So this is where we left off at. Now, a poet of the time period at this point, well, a poet after, that time period, recounting this and another significant event in history, mentioned some poetry about it. So we'll quote the Imam, who cites his poetry, and he starts by saying, quote, وقالت سبيعة بنت الأحب ابن زبيبة ابن حذيفة ابن عوف ابن معاوية ابن بكر ابن هوازن ابن منصور ابن عكرمة ابن خصفة ابن قيس ابن عيلان، وكانت عند عبد مناف ابن كعب ابن سعد ابن تيم ابن مرة ابن كعب ابن لؤي ابن غالب ابن فهر ابن مالك ابن النضر ابن كنانة، لابن لها منه يقال له خالد، تعظم عليه حرم كعبة وتنهاه عن البغي فيها وتذكر تبعا وتذلل له وما صنع بها. There was a poet, Subay'ah, the daughter of Al-Ahab, who was the son of Zabiba, the son of Jathima, the son of Auf, the son of Muawiyah, the son of Bakr, the son of Hawazin, the son of Mansur, the son of Ikrimah, the son of Khasafa, the son of Qais, the son of Ilan. And this poet, Subay'ah, was the wife of Abdul Manaf, who was the son of Ka'ab, the son of Sa'ad, the son of Taym, the son of Murrah, the son of Ka'ab, the son of Lu'ay, the son of Ghalib, the son of Fihr, the son of Malik, the son of Al-Nadr, the son of Kinana. One day, while Subay'ah was in the presence of her husband Abdul Manaf, she said to her son Khalid, "You know, Tubba the Last was shown the holiness of the Kaaba, and it was heavy upon him. That holiness prevented him from any wrongdoing in its precincts. And Tubba the Last was reminded of how it made him humble, and how he was to be humble with all of what he did in its midst. يا بني لا تظلم بمكة لا الصغير ولا كبير. My son, Do you not remember that you're not to commit oppression in the vicinity of Mecca, whether shall it be a large sin or a small sin? This is a grave transgression. واحفظ محارمها بني ولا يغترنك الغرور. Preserve the sacred boundaries of this land, my son. Do not let the deceiver trick you into violating any portion, not even one. بني من يظلم بمكة يلقى أطراف الشرور. My son, who would commit some oppression in noble Mecca and be safe after all of the evils he's done in its location? بني يضرب وجهه ويلح بخديه السعير. My son, was his face not struck with the blow? His cheeks were stained with blood and seared with the heat, as you know. بني قد جربتها فوجدت ظالمها يبور. My son, did I not discuss this fact? So that did I not find the oppressor ready to carry out his designs in fact? الله أمنها وما منيت بعرصتها القصور. Allah did indeed safeguard us from the harm that fateful day. And He preserved what was built, including its beautiful and castled courtyard on that day. والله آمن طيرها والعصم تؤمن على الثبير. Allah preserved everything, even the birds in the sky, and all the affairs around it were safeguarded. No need to ask why. ولقد غزاها تبع فكسى بنيتها الحبير. Tubba the Last started out with the aim of laying it waste, then ended up clothing it with fine brocade as a kiswa with haste. وأذل ربي ملكه فيها فأوفى بالنذور. The dominion of this one was brought low by my very Lord. The king was forced to make many oaths and sacrifices, laying down his sword. يمشي إليها حافيا بفنائها ألفا بعير. The king came to it humbled in every regard, slaughtered 1,000 camels and offered them to the sanctuary to show high regard. ويظل يطعم أهلها لهم المهادي والجزور. He shaded the people and fed them with much respect, with meat freshly slaughtered to the Lord and nothing suspect. يسقيهم العسل المصفى والرحيم من الشعير. He gave them pure flowing honey to drink from as a gift from him, and preserved the pilgrims from impurities of all kinds that might come to them. Close quote. So we see in this poetry, she's recounting all of what happened on that day. From the king, Tubba the Last, showing respect to the Kaaba, putting a kiswa on it, having a slaughter done, himself making tawaf around it, giving the people honey, looking after their needs, and extolling its grandeur, its honor, its rank, its majesty. And this was a man who, moments before, in an eye blink, had been worshiping idols. Then he entered into Judaism, and now here he is, upon the request of two rabbinical scholars, showing due reference to the Kaaba. But then the poetess makes another comparison, where she says, quote, وَالْفِيلُ أَهْلَكَ جَيْشُهُ يَرْمُونَ فِيهَا بَالصَّخُورِ. And don't forget the elephants and how their army was destroyed. Birds with round pebbles against them were deployed. وَالْمُلْكُ فِي أَقْصَى الْبِلَادِ وَفِي الْعَاجِمِ وَالْخَزِيرِ. This time it was from a dominion from a faraway land, among the non-Arabs who came with arms in their hands. فَاسْمَعْ إِذَا حُدِّثَتْ وَفَهَمْ كَيْفَ عَاقِبَةُ الْأَمُورِ. Look at how things were brought to bear in protection of this location. Understand how the end came to those who tried to raise their hands against this noble station. Close quote. So here you see the poetess Subay'ah. She makes the link between two major incidents involving Mecca. One was the potential attack from Tubba the Last, which was repulsed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala making him to be humbled and to come to there in a state of utter and complete humility and to sanctify, extol the grace of, and show respect to the noble Kaaba. The second big incident was the incident of the elephant, Amul Fil, the year of the elephant. So she links these two events, saying although they were separate events over different spans of time, they both demonstrated how Allah has supernaturally done things to show the holiness of the Kaaba, the sanctity of that city, and in specifics within that city, the Kaaba. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has shown that sanctity repeatedly. And by doing so, it's a lesson for us to take away. And this is the wisdom in her poetry that you can take away, where she mentioned Tubba the Last, and then also Abraha al-Ashram, the king of Yemen who came from a faraway land. But rather than him taking heed of the sanctity, nobility, and honor of the Kaaba, rather than him taking heed, instead, he was destroyed. Completely destroyed. And the incident of the elephant, in the year of the elephant, that will come up soon. But this is a very powerful reminder of how the schemes of kings, no matter how absolute their monarchy, no matter how grand their armies, no matter how abiding their rule, when they reach transgression against Allah and he brings about his affair, none can turn back that affair. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's judgment is executed. The Imam Abdul Malik ibn Hisham rahimahullah, he says, quote, قال ابن هشام يوقظ على قوافيها لا تعرب. We will pause at this poetry and its meter and not go further ahead, as this would require explaining all of its details and wording. Close quote. So here the Imam is saying that he's not going to go into critiquing the different ways it can be recited in the language and everything else. He'll stop there and not go further. Whereas Imam al-Suhaili rahimahullah, who commented upon the text, he goes into painstaking detail about the different aspects of the poetry, the depth of it, how it can be pronounced, the different ways it can be read, and what our takeaways are. But as the Imam said in the beginning, Ibn Hisham, that he doesn't want it to be a book of poetry for the base of the book to be about that, but rather the poetry is put just for marking points in time by themselves. We now come to 3.4, Unit 3, Chapter 4, Asl Yahudiyya bil Yemen, the origin of Judaism in the Yemen. So now, the Imam, he says, quote, ثم خرج منها متوجها إلى اليمن بمن معه من جنوده وبالحبرين حتى إذا دخل اليمن دعا قومه إلى الدخول فيما دخل فيه فأبوا عليه حتى يحاكموه إلى النار التي كانت باليمن. Tubba the Last, after completing his duties, left from the precinct in Mecca and made his way towards Yemen, with his army in tow with him and accompanied by the two Jewish scholars. He continued along until he entered Yemen and called his people to enter into the religion he had accepted. They refused at first. They stated that everyone should take judgment from the matter to a special fire in the Yemen that will decide on this issue. قال ابن إسحاق حدثني أبو مالك بن ثعلبة بن أبي مالك القرظي قال سمعت إبراهيم بن محمد بن طلحة بن عبيد الله يحدث أن تبعا لما دنا من اليمن ليدخلها حالت حميار بينه وبين ذلك وقالوا لا تدخلها علينا وقد فارقت ديننا فداعهم إلى دينه وقال إنه خير من دين فقالوا فحاكمنا إلى النار قال نعم. Ibn Ishaq mentioned and narrated in the following way, when he said, It was narrated to us by Abu Malik ibn Tha'laba ibn Abi Malik al-Qurzi, who said, I heard Ibrahim ibn Muhammad ibn Talha ibn Ubaydullah narrate by saying that Tubba the Last, when he neared Yemen so he could enter into it, he was stopped by the people of Himyar, who said, do not enter this land as you've broken away from our religion. He then called them to his religion by saying, indeed, this religion is better than any religion. They replied that they should take their arbitration to the special fire, to which the king replied in the affirmative. قال وكانت باليمن فيما يزعم أهل اليمن نار تحكم بينهم فيما يختلفون فيه تأكل الظالم ولا تضر المظلوم فخرج قومه بأوثانهم وما يتقربون به في دينهم وخرج الحبران بمصافهما في عناقهما متقلديهما. This special fire used to be present in Yemen, and the people would make judgment to it whenever they had a dispute that needed to be solved. If the person was an oppressor, the fire would devour them. But if the person was oppressed or done wrongly, the fire would not harm that one. The people of Himyar came out with their idols and what they used for sacrificial rites and observances in their religion. And not long after, the two rabbinical scholars came out with the pages of their Torah scrolls that they had put and their phylacteries that were around near their neck that was following behind them. Close quote. Now, this is an important portion to keep in mind. The children of Israel, when they pray in the capacity that they do in their religion of Judaism, whenever they make prayer, and their prayer they refer to as davening, D-A-V-V-E-N, and it comes from a root in Hebrew that refers to concentration, and it's from the same root in Arabic that we have for diyana, to make judgment to, or to make judgment by something with fervor. There's certain things that they wear. One of the things that they wear is the talis or talis or talit, which is a long piece of cloth that has a stripe on each end and a series of fringes. When you add up the fringes that go around this talis or talis, they equal 613. And that is the 613 laws when they add up all of what they were given from the Torah given to them by Nabi Musa alayhi salam. They say it's 613 laws altogether according to their counting scheme. So they use this to pray. And in addition to that, they then also wear what's called tefillin or tefillah. Tefillin I've seen often translated as phylacteries, which is the Greek translation of this. But the Hebrew word is tefillin. And what they are is there are two leather boxes, one that is tied to the top, near the top of the head, and another that's tied around the arm. And there is a box on there as well. Within those two boxes are pieces of parchment. And each parchment has 3,188 letters on it from certain quotes from their book that they call the Torah today. It is written out by a sofer, a special scribe, and to write out that parchment takes more than half a day to do, because the letters have to be pointed in a certain way, the markings have to be a certain way, there has to be a certain amount of space between each letter. But what's in those parchments is sections of what's left of their Torah that they received. And so in each of those two boxes, there's a parchment. So they're wearing the talis over the head, and they have the tefillin wrapped around their arms, and a portion of the tefillin wrapped at the head. So I want you to have this picture in your head. When the children of Israel are then coming out to demonstrate the true God, what is the true religion, they're wearing the clothes that they would for prayer. The people of Himyar, they come out with their idols and what they use for sacrificial rites and observances in their religion. So they're coming out with all of those things. But for these two rabbinical scholars, they come out with the pages of their Torah scrolls and their tefillin that they have. So this is the stage that's being set for a battle to show who is telling the truth, and the one that is the oppressor or the liar will be devoured by the fire. So the Imam continues, quote, حتى قعدوا للنار عند مخرجها الذي تخرج منه فخرجت النار إليهم فلما أقبلت نحوهم حادوا عنها وهابوها فدمرهم من حضرهم من الناس وأمرهم بالصبر لها فصبروا حتى غشيتهم فأكلت الأوثان وما قربوا معها ومن حمل ذلك من رجال حميار. The two rabbinical scholars sat next to the place where the fire would come out and waited, along with the people of Himyar. The fire would only follow and seek the one it desired to destroy. The people said, whoever is able to repel and survive the fire is the closest to the truth. The mystic fire flashed out in fury and encircled all who were gathered there that day. When it came forward to all those gathered, some of the bystanders told the Himyar people there, be patient, remain calm, wait. The fire came near, but they remained there until the fire engulfed them all and then burned the idols and what they used for sacrificial rites and observances. This fire also destroyed all those who carried the idols and the other items and left not one of the men of Himyar to remain at his place. Thus, they had not been able to repel the fire. وخرج الحبران بمصاحفهما بأعناقهما تعرق جباهما ولم تدرهما فأسفقت عند ذلك حميار على دينه فمن هنالك وعن ذلك كان أصل اليهودية باليمن. As for the two rabbis, the fire came near to them, but they were reciting passages from the Torah scrolls they possessed. The fire receded from them until it returned to the place it had flashed out from in the beginning. They came out of the place of special fire with their scrolls and their tefillin around their necks, trailing behind them. They were sweating from the heat in their clothes, but they had not been harmed by the fire. The people of Himyar from that day entered into the religion of Judaism. And this is the history of how Judaism came into Yemen. قال ابن إسحاق وقد حدثني محدث أن الحبرين ومن خرج من حميار إنما اتبعوا النار ليردوا وقالوا من ردها فهو أولى بالحق. Ibn Ishaq mentioned, it was narrated to me by hadith scholars that the two rabbinical scholars and those who came out of Himyar had only followed the fire in order to repulse it and put it out. They had said previously, whoever can repulse it and put it out is closest to the truth. فدنا منها رجال من حميار بأوثانهم ليردوها فدنت منهم لتأكلهم فحادوا عنها ولم يستطيعوا ردها ودنا منها الحبران بعد ذلك وجعل يتلون التوراة وتنكس عنهما حتى رداها إلى مخرجها الذي خرجت منه فأسفقت عند ذلك حميار على دينهما والله أعلم أي ذلك كان. So the men of Himyar came with their idols in order to repulse it and put it out. The fire neared them and devoured them. They pulled away from it and were not able to repulse it. The two rabbis came near it after that, and they were reciting portions of the Torah with their tefillin on. And the fire receded from them until it went to the place that it had exited from in the first place. At that point, Himyar entered Judaism. Allah knows best which of these events in this fashion happened first. Close quote. So we see from here then that Judaism now is not just a religion being kept by some people in Yemen, but it formally enters into Yemen in which the people of Himyar are those who enter into Judaism. So actual Arabs convert to Judaism. And this was not because of missionary work that was done by the children of Israel. Because this religion of Judaism, that is first reference we have of it is from 200 BC. This religion of Judaism is not a missionary religion where they send missionaries to different locations and they look to do missions to bring people in. That's not what the children of Israel have done with their religion. It's not what they've done. They've held tightly to it and kept it to themselves, and only those who may wish to convert, but they haven't sought converts. So in this instance, the children of Israel are forced to defend themselves because Tubba the Last wants to come back into his land after having been away, and the people must have recognized something about him was different. Maybe it was his clothes. Maybe it was because they could see that he was worshiping in a different way. Maybe they saw he had the rabbinical scholars with him. But there's something about him that when he went to enter in, they knew he's no longer worshiping after our gods, and he's no longer following the mystic fire. This then triggered an argument, and this argument could only be resolved by consulting the mystic fire. But upon consultation with the mystic fire, it left the rabbinical scholars intact and destroyed the idol worshippers and their idols. Why, when we know that Judaism is false? Because Judaism at its root was originally given to them. The original religion given to them wasn't Judaism, but the root of what was given, that later Judaism was built on top of, was the Torah of Nabiyyuna Musa alayhi salam. And because those portions of truth are left in their religion, and the portions of revelation are left in the book that they now call their Torah, because there's portions of truth left in it, they are not destroyed. Because at the root, what they have comes from Allah. And there shall be no victory of idolatry over the truth that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given, even though there may be admixture of falsehood added to it, even if it be the majority. The fact that the kernel, that spark, that seed of truth is left there, that indicates that there is truth that's left there. And based upon that, the mystic fire destroyed the idol worshippers and left the children of Israel. And the mystic fire was ultimately, it went back to the place where it receded from and went out. Now, whether it went out after that presentation or the two rabbinical scholars followed the fire into its sanctuary and it went out and they came out, that's the part of where we're not sure which happened first, whether the second part that I mentioned happened first or the first portion. That, the Imam Abdul Malik ibn Hisham rahimahullah says, Allah knows best which of those happened first. But these events both came to pass. Now we're going to see, and now that this happens, we're going to find out, with the spread of Judaism into Himyar, the two rabbinical scholars start to go about the process of cleaning up that area. So they don't want any traces of the previous idolatrous past from Himyar's period. So let's look at what happens. Quote, هدم البيت مسمى Ri'aam. Unit 3, Chapter 5. The destruction of the temple known as Ri'aam. قال ابن إسحاق وكان رئام بيتا لهم يعظمونه وينحرون عنده ويكلمون منه إذا كانوا على شركهم فقال حبران لتبع إنما هو الشيطان يفتنهم بذلك فخلي بيننا وبينه. There used to be a temple that the people used to venerate and make sacrifices in front of it and receive speech from it. يكلمون منه. So they remained steadfast upon their idolatry due to this thing. The two rabbis said to Tubba the Last, This thing is a demon that only causes tribulations. So put an end to this matter between us and it. فاستخرجا منه فيما يزعم أهل اليمن كلبا أسود فذبحاه ثم هدما ذلك البيت فبقاياه اليوم كما ذكر لي بها آثار الدماء التي كانت تهراق عليها. The king replied, then you may do with the matter as you please. The two rabbinical scholars brought out a black dog from the temple and destroyed it. Then they destroyed the actual temple complex itself. Some of its remains can be seen today, as was mentioned to me, and there are even blood spats of it from the blood that was splashed from the dog and the sacrifices on that temple that one can still see on it today. Close quote. So we see then from here that the children of Israel now move into their next phase, which is consolidating Judaism in the Himyar. They don't want traces of the previous religion, and they don't want any traces of the previous temples, veneration of idols, or any of those other affairs. They want the people of Himyar to learn Judaism in a systematic fashion. And by Judaism, when we're talking about, it must be understood. The Judaism that they're following is what is today called Orthodox Judaism. You may see in your research or your studies different expressions or different kinds of Judaism. You may have heard of Conservative Judaism, Reform Judaism, Reconstructionist Judaism. You've heard of all of these titles, but these titles do not occur, or these forms of Judaism do not occur until the Enlightenment. The Enlightenment was a period in Europe where people began to decide to break free from religion. The most important touchstone for the Enlightenment was Germany. In Germany, people began to try to break free from religion. They reintroduced the Greek classics and tried to pull from the ancient pagan past and become humanists. The Jewish people of Germany saw that this might be an opportunity to obtain citizenship in Germany and in wider Europe, because the reason they had been refused their rights and been refused their ability to fully take part in German society and the wider European society in countries such as today's Belgium and others was for religious reasons. It was contended by the Christians that the Jews had killed Christ, that they were the villains throughout history, and therefore they may not take part in society as full members and citizens, except in the capacity as bankers or lawyers, because those were viewed as the dirtiest professions, or tax collecting. So the children of Israel saw this as an opportunity to gain citizenship in society. So the Jewish version of the Enlightenment was what's called the Haskalah. And the Haskalah was where Jews decided to attempt to blend into German society and leave behind the Judaism of their past. By doing so, the men shaved their beards. They cut their hair with razors. They stopped praying and wearing the traditional clothing. They stopped using the tallis. They stopped wearing the tzitzit. They stopped wearing the tefillin. The women stopped covering their heads. And they started to try to adapt the regular clothes of the people around them, but still holding on to something of what was called Judaism. So Reconstructionism, or Reconstructionist Judaism was an attempt to make Judaism palatable and less threatening to Germany and wider Europe. So you started to see synagogues being adapted to look more like Lutheran churches. The cantor, or the one that speaks in the synagogue, rather than speaking in Hebrew, speaks in German. Rather than reading from their Torah in Hebrew, they'll read in German. They'll have the men and women sitting next to each other. All of these things that they wanted to do to show that they were ready to become citizens. This is Reconstructionist Judaism. And conservative Judaism came out of that, and conservative Judaism is the belief that certain parts of the Torah are immutable, but certain parts are not. And certain parts are subject to interpretation. Reform Judaism is the belief that the Torah is not wholly divine and immutable, and that it is the work, it is a cultural artifact and work of the Hebrew people that's inspired by them. One of the most important figures of this was a man by the name of Abraham Geiger, former rabbi coming from an upright Jewish family. He is the father of many different modernist Jewish trends, and he is also the father of what's known as Jüdisch Wissenschaft, Jewish studies, which gives birth to Orientalism. So these forms of Judaism, Reconstructionist, conservative, reform, and then you have the neo-Orthodox, who will try to take as much as possible from real Judaism, but then they will believe in evolution. Then they will believe in other things. So they'll take pieces and parts. But prior to 150 years ago, there was only one type of Judaism. And this is the Judaism that was practiced, known as Orthodox Judaism. Now, the form of Orthodox Judaism many of us might only be familiar with if we've lived in English-speaking countries, will be where we see a man with a large black hat, large beard, and his hair isn't cut on the sides, and he might be wearing knee-high white tube socks, garments without buttons, and the women will be wearing a wig, long dresses, and the like. Yes, that is Orthodox Judaism, but that particular form of Orthodox Judaism is Hasidism. These people are usually or most likely Hasidim, which are the Hasidic Jews, and this is a movement that grew out of another great rabbi and Jewish figure who was before the Reconstructionists and these other movements, whose name was the Baal Shem Tov. The Baal Shem Tov was a renewer of Judaism because he had seen that many of the Jews in his time had become bogged down with rituals and laws, and they didn't have enough of a connection to the law. So the Baal Shem Tov, he was also, so you're looking at around 300 years ago, the Baal Shem Tov was contemporary to the Gaon of Vilna, who was a famous Tannaist. He was a specialist in the Talmud and other literature. He was a specialist and viewed by many as a saint. He was considered the Vilna of Gaon, the Gaon of Vilna. This the saint of Vilna. Baal Shem Tov brings about this social movement known as Hasidism, which was opposed by the Gaon of Vilna at first because it was seen as too ecstatic, and there was a lot of mystical aspects added to it that he did not approve of. So when you're seeing the people practicing Hasidism, that is Orthodox Judaism, but that wasn't the only form of Orthodox Judaism. And the clothing that you're seeing them wearing is primarily of the Polish or Eastern European aristocracy. The Orthodox Judaism that we're talking about that was converted into by Abu Karb Tubba the Last is the Orthodox Judaism that you see practiced by the Jews in the Arab world, and specifically the Jews of the Yemen, which predates the Baal Shem Tov, predates the Gaon of Vilna, predates many of the movements today. This particular Judaism, or form of it, is Orthodox and predates them. So rather than wearing wigs, these women wear head covers. The men don't have pes, which are the long locks on the side. Rather than that, they just have their hair one length. They don't cut it. So they don't wear pes, they wear just long hair. And most of the world's Jews are not Ashkenazi, which is this form of this particular expression and way of expressing Judaism. They're actually Sephardi, which are the Jews of the Arab world, these other areas. And that is the vast majority of what they are. And it's this expression of Judaism that Tubba the Last converts into. And that spreads among the Himyar people who convert en masse and the rest of Yemen. We will pause here for today, but our next lesson, inshallah, we will be looking at Unit 3, Chapter 6, Mulku Hassan ibn Tubban wa qatluhu ala yadi akhihi Amr. The rule of Hassan ibn Tubban and his murder at the hands of his brother Amr. So our goal will be to look at him because Hassan is the son of the last Tubba the Last, he is his son. And it is from here that you'll start to see the acceleration of the takeover of Yemen that was mentioned in the vision of Rabi'a ibn Nasr. You'll start to see it's accelerating very, very quickly. So far we've reached the people of Yemen went from worshiping idols. Now the Himyar people have converted to Judaism. And then we have Hassan ibn Tubban, who's going to be killed by his brother Amr. And then on the back of that, there's going to be an acceleration of events that will bring the Abyssinians into the Yemen. So this is, all of it's been exciting, but this part, alhamdulillah, is the really in-depth, powerful part where we're going to reach the fulfillment of that vision of Rabi'a ibn Nasr. And we hope, inshallah, you'll join us for the next presentation. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you for listening. And inshallah, we'll benefit one another in this huge endeavor. We say, Subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdika wa ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant. Astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Innahu ghafurur rahim hamid rahim wa la ilaha illa Allah. Wassalamu alaykum.